Hello, hello, and welcome back to yet another podcast of my 2 cents. And I hope you guys are having just a great week or just a great, life overall. I have a cousin that recovered from COVID. Actually, no, she doesn't have COVID anymore, but she's still recovering. Something that I don't understand why people don't know this because it's common knowledge nowadays, but if you had COVID, even mild symptoms are, even if you were asymptomatic, um, you may have lung problems, respiratory problems. Um, I have some cases close to me, and obviously there are studies that point to that as well. So regardless of having people close to you that have that, it doesn't matter. Science shows that whenever you contracted COVID, most of the symptoms are going to be on your lungs. We have outgoing symptoms like dry cough, lack of sense of smell and taste. Your palate gets fucked up and fever and all that stuff. But the main and most concerning one is what it does to your brain and what it does to your lungs. Mostly your lungs are affected, and that's completely plausible and possible even if you are asymptomatic. And the reason I'm telling you guys this is because my cousin is one of the people who contracted COVID. She goes into that statistic, and she also goes into the statistic of a person who was completely asymptomatic. She only found out that she had it because she was in contact with a person who had it as well, which everybody knew about, and then she got tested, and the test came out positive. And after a while, you have to wait like 20 days. She went back to the doctor and discovered that her lungs were like harmed. About 30% of her lungs were harmed, even being supposedly asymptomatic. So that's pretty crazy. And now she has to go through a lot of procedures to recover. These procedures are just a little bit concerning because we don't know how long they could be. We don't know how long this side effect could last. And even though this is, again, common knowledge, like I'm not a scientist and I know this because all I have to do is read about it or search this information out. I see a lot of people just not believing in it. I mean, I don't get it. Do you guys have this problem too? Or maybe you are part of the problem. I don't know. But science is not a person. Science is an institution. So not believing in vaccines and not believing in what who, the World Health Organization tells us makes very little sense to me because it's not about believing, it's about understanding. That's the difference. You don't believe in science, you study and you understand it. And I think a lot of people just think it's a matter of belief. Like, oh, I don't believe in what that scientist told me. Yeah, of course, if it's just a scientist at a party just drinking and telling shit, this is one thing. But when a scientist is very simply showcasing the results of our research, then that's not his or her opinion, sorry. This is what people came up with. This is the result of research. We have samples, big samples of people that just gather around or are surveyed by a bunch of scientists, and they find out with a margin of error, but usually is around 2 or 3%, depending on what we are talking about. And that's it. It's an institution. So of course science could be wrong, but then again, it has nothing to do with belief. It has to do with testing. And the more we know about something, the more our knowledge changes. And I don't know. A lot of people are scientifically illiterate, and I mean this in the nicest possible way. I don't mean to call anybody stupid. I'm just saying people don't know much about the basics of science, and I get friends. A lot of people make fun of Brazilians who still like Bolsonaro here in Brazil because they usually believe in fake news, they are usually against vaccines, they are usually against the use of masks and all that. So they are very easy to make fun of, but these things, being scientifically illiterate, is very unfortunately not fixed only with people from the far right end of the spectrum. We have people from the left that also don't quite believe that the vaccine will work. People who didn't understand the use of masks, or they didn't understand why we should be apart from each other. I know a lot of friends that are very progressive and very aligned with the left ideologies, and they still gathered. They still didn't use masks as much as they should, which is all the time when you are around other people. And I don't understand. I really don't. Like a lot of people say, this virus and this pandemic is political. If you think that you are an idiot, I'm sorry to call it out, but it's true. Like I heard a close friend of mine. I'm not saying generally you are an idiot, but at least in this subject you are being idiotic. I have my boss. Maybe one day she'll listen to this podcast. She's the boss of 3 classes I have per week, so she's not my general boss, but I do work for her 3 hours per week, sometimes four. And she has an English school, and I teach for her. And she's not stupid in general, but when it's about vaccines and, handling the pandemic and all the news that we get, it's very frustrating to talk to her. I'm using her as an example, right? We can talk like this about anybody. Um, Anybody really. It's difficult to talk to people who believe in fake news because you would just assume that when you're talking to an educated adult, they won't just quote fake news. I had a problem with a student that is also part of the same company. The company has nothing to do with political assignments or anything like this or alignment. It's just they happen to share the same beliefs. And the guy don't live here in Brazil, he lives in London. Hopefully he listens to this podcast and gives me his opinion later. I always send them the links to my podcast. I'm just not sure if they listen to because sometimes there aren't many viewers. This is just supposed to go to my students, but I also send to colleagues as well. Sometimes they listen to it, sometimes they don't, but it doesn't matter right now. Um, so I do not understand, all right, how people just don't believe in science. I mean, where were you all any other year before today? Where were you? Because before today, I mean nowadays, this past 2 years, actually this past year and a half that we're talking a lot about vaccines, where were you distrusting like the flu vaccine or the yellow fever vaccine? Where were you? You know what I mean? Like people just tend to trust or distrust things for the sake of argument or just for the sake of, having the illusion of knowing something that even people who are clearly more prepared than them know. So they know something else. It's just like flat Earth, right? Flat earthers have the same thing going on. They are saying something that is obviously stupid. It's funny even at times. The only thing that isn't funny about flat earthers is that they are anti-Semites. I don't know if all flat earthers are anti-Semites, but the group, the institution of people that is composed by people who believe the earth is flat. They also believe that the Jews are behind all the funding to NASA and all this stuff, space race. They just think it's the Jews. So they're anti-Semite. This part is not funny at all, but it's geometrically funny to think that the earth is flat. And if you see some of the arguments, I mean, how can you take these people seriously, How can you be mad at a guy or a girl that believes the earth is flat? It's difficult to be mad. Only when they are anti-Semites. Then, of course, we should be mad because it's just ludicrous. But anyway, now, when we are talking about vaccine or environmental changes, these things are not supposed to be discussed anymore, you know? Like, at least before you talk shit about it, study, learn and understand what you're talking about, and then maybe you can have a somewhat of a credible opinion. It's just like a undergrad student reading Immanuel Kant for like 2 days, and then this person goes to the teacher and says, "Hey, I don't agree with Kant. I think he's just a cunt." No, I'm kidding. I think he's wrong, and I think he's exaggerating. Like, cool, man. You should be entitled to your opinion, all right? But don't expect me to take it seriously. Everybody has the right for their own opinion. I'm not saying that if you don't have enough information, you should not give an opinion. But do not expect people to take it seriously because they won't. You know, it's like a child talking about divorce. You know, you have a 8-year-old child talk about you haven't lived enough. You haven't been married. You probably at the best know some close family relatives that were divorced. So you shouldn't talk about divorce. And even if you do, nobody will listen. It's the same with stupid, uninformed opinions. Like if you're talking about something that you clearly do not understand, why should anyone listen to you? We will hear you, but we won't listen to you. Like the noise that comes out of your mouth will be heard, but don't expect it to be taken seriously. Um, and I mean this again in the nicest possible way. Maybe you are a person who are listening to this podcast and you are in the end of the spectrum where you don't believe in vaccines or you are a skeptic, that's fine. All right, that's fine. That's part of being a human being. We don't know everything. I certainly don't. That's why this is called my 2 cents. Just because it's my opinion. It's not my expert opinion. It's just my personal opinion. But please tell me something. If you don't believe in vaccines, if you don't believe in the COVID vaccine, have you ever taken a flu shot before? Have you ever taken the flu vaccine? If you haven't, maybe a family member or a friend has. So, why did you question it then? Or any other vaccine, to be honest. Any other, literally any other vaccine. Like, why are you just questioning it right now? Oh, because it was done too fast. If you think that let me tell you, you are wrong. It's not too fast. If you don't know, this vaccine has been processed for like 50 or 50 over 50 something years. It's been a while, all right? The only thing we did is to take the same compound as it was for the flu vaccine, and we adapted for it to make us immune to the coronavirus vaccine. But the compound is very similar. This vaccine has been done since forever. Not to mention, a pandemic is reason enough to look for a vaccine as fast as we can. So we had a lot of money, a lot of international investments, and as a result, we got a vaccine from which the compound was done like 50 years ago or something, and then we just adapted to COVID. If you don't know what I'm talking about, or if you think I'm taking this information out of my ass, leave something in the comments and I can give you guys the articles, or maybe I'll just, I'm sorry, maybe I'll just post the articles in the description anyway. Everything that I'm talking, this is what I'll do. Everything that I'm mentioning here, you can find the article to it, to this information in the description of the video. All right? So if you don't believe me, you don't have to. Just go read for yourself. All right? And if you don't believe in science, because again, then just the notion of thinking science is something to be believed is already wrong. But if you don't believe in science, I cannot help you. This is beyond my abilities. So again, I don't understand any of that. I rather know someone that is very, very paranoid with COVID, that never goes out and has taken their work just completely to their house, is just ordering food and groceries. Like the person just never goes out. I rather have this person who's at least being careful to a person that just believes nothing that was said in the news or whatever place they get their information from. And they just go out, they don't use a mask, they give trouble, they go to restaurants all the time. Like, no, dude, no. Come on, what are you thinking? Like, you don't have to do much. In fact, This is the one chance you have in your life to save lives by not doing anything. Like, not doing anything. Okay? I don't think we will ever have an opportunity such as this ever again. Like, we have the opportunity to save lives, but just not doing anything. This is a one in a lifetime opportunity for you to be a hero just by not doing shit. So when you go out and you do stuff, you're just putting yourself at risk and other people at risk. Now, I know nowadays a lot of people have been vaccinated, so fuck it, right? A lot of places in some countries you can just go out without a mask and everything will be fine, and that's great because people have been vaccinated. But we do have variations of the disease, and we need to be aware that things might not be normal again for a while. We need to have this in our heads so we don't get disappointed because disappointment is just so easy to happen, right? It's very easy for us to be disappointed because we are expecting something and something else happens, we get disappointed. So don't expect things to go back to normal permanently because we have variations and we have over 3 billion viruses in nature that hasn't been in contact with us yet. So it's very likely that sooner rather than later we are going to have contact with another virus that could be even more dangerous than this one. So just, I don't know, be prepared for that idea. This should not be something that needed to be said. It shouldn't. For some reason it is. So I don't know. For the two people that listen to this podcast, I'm saying these things. And again, you do not have to trust me, all right? You can simply search this information for yourself and please search reliable sources. Don't search on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, you know? And if you do search on these places, at least look for professionals there giving their opinion. You know, if you're gonna watch some YouTube video, don't watch it out of an influencer or something. You need to see it from a scientist, from a doctor who's active. Okay? This is the important part. If you're gonna search something for yourself, if you're gonna search something regarding science, you should see what the scientific community say as a whole, say as an institution, not as a singular person. And you usually get that from scientists that are active, you know? If a scientist, okay, the guy has, I don't know, a PhD in physics or a PhD, let's just keep the context, a PhD in factology or biology or whatever. But the person hasn't worked in this field for 20 years. And nowadays they just give, they just make YouTube videos and they give these random talks in auditoriums and theaters and they became like a coach or something. Um, you should not listen to these people. All right? This is not a reliable source unless they are talking something or they're talking about something that has been mentioned by the scientific community as an institution. They are not trustworthy. And I see that here in Brazil. Like we have thousands of doctors saying one thing, and then out comes this random person, random doctor from a good hospital, sure, but she's saying all these crazy things about treatments and talking, about conspiracy theories regarding the vaccine and regarding the origin of the virus, like a lot of bullshit. And people listen to her. Why? I don't get it. It's so frustrating. You have thousands of doctors, and then one that was clearly, but how? Okay, for the people who believe in things like that, let me ask you something. How does it make sense to you? All right, how does it make sense to you that one person is telling the truth and a thousand aren't? How does it make sense to you that a thousand people were bought and just one wasn't? Isn't more plausible and logical that is the other way around? What is easier for you to pay one person or a thousand? So, yeah, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's very unlikely. It's just like China being responsible for the virus, on purpose. Like they created the virus in a lab and they had all of this planned out. Like, how crazy is that? How crazy would they have to be to do that? Because obviously this would have been, people would find out. People would find out eventually. And that's what they are trying to do now. They are trying to understand exactly how this happened because people are pissed that China keeps growing and the other countries are going down the drain. Of course, richest countries are not, but developing countries got just fucked in the ass, just like Brazil is right now. So I understand the anger, but how fucked up and crazy and ill-advised would it be for China to have done it on purpose? Because again, there's not only scientists in China, we have scientists and very good ones all around the world. So obviously, eventually they will find out. So unless they have a second stage to this plan, this is the worst plan ever. And I'm sorry, but it just doesn't sound like China to have such a stupid plan. Because if they proved something for us, at the very least, is that they are not stupid. As a country, they are not stupid. They know what they're doing. It's another thing to say it's correct or it's ethical. That's not for me to say. And I know a lot of people think they are not. And it's a dictatorship. There's a lot of censorship and all that. But again, they are not stupid. So I cannot imagine they making such a rookie mistake. Just, oh, they were developing the virus to be much more deadly and much more contagious, but then the virus just, there was an outbreak on the lab, and then it spread on Wuhan, and then it started spreading to the whole world. And yeah, it was the whole thing, man. They were just planning to do something bigger, and there was an accident in a lab. No, just fucking no. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Actually, I hope I'm not. Because just imagine how shitty our lives will be if this is true. Imagine how shitty the world will be if we have an actual World War III, you know? Imagine, like, I don't know if you probably do better than me even because I don't have much of an idea, but the army isn't what it used to be. Here in Brazil, I guess it's still very archaic, but United States, North Korea, China, these places have nuclear heads to just finish our life on the planet Earth. Just in general, they have enough power, they have enough weapons, they have enough atomic heads, atomic bombs to just finish life on Earth as we know it. So if we do have a war and countries start actually attacking each other, we have planes that have simply no pilot. Planes that are completely automized. We have drones, we have airstrikes, we have atomic heads. Like, it wouldn't be pretty, and I don't think this is what China wants. Because if they were responsible for fucking up with the world's economy and killing millions of people and finishing just with a lot of jobs and stability and security in a lot of different places in the world, people are not just gonna come to them and say, "Hey, it's fine, just pay us something, just compensate and we'll leave you alone." No, people go insane. They will go insane. So it's again unlikely that they've done something like this. Having said that, it's not impossible. I just hope, just completely hope that I am correct in this one. I usually hope that I am wrong because I'm a pessimist, but I think this is just too pessimistic and too crazy. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. I had a student tell me that on Tuesday. I mentioned this earlier in this podcast, and to me, he was just saying rubbish. Like, no, this is unlikely, man. And again, you don't have to become a scientist. You do not have to be this person that just lives for science. You do not need to be that. However, please do not be scientifically illiterate to just think that science is a matter of opinion. and think that you can learn about science in a random YouTube video or in a random Facebook post. All right? Just have some critical thinking for fuck's sake and go read an actual scientific article for you to be informed with this random shit that you are not. Clearly not. If you are, like, it's alright to question stuff, okay? It's alright. It's even good. But you need to have some sort of discernment. Otherwise, you're just questioning everything. And to me, it's just as bad of not questioning anything. Like if you question everything, you are in the same exact place of a person that never questions a thing. You need to know at least some sort of information. You need to have enough information to disagree. So if something doesn't make sense to you, you should question it, but don't question it by going the other way. Oh, I'm against vaccines. No, if you don't trust them, it's because you don't understand how they work, so you should study it. All right? And I'm tired of telling people this. I really am. Like, I don't usually tell this to my students. And I'm doing this on the podcast, so if you are a student and if you are listening, please take what I'm saying into consideration at the very least. If it's something that you do not understand, you should look it up. You just should look it up. You should study it and you should understand it. And if you don't, stop talking about it. You don't have the right to question something such as science if you don't understand it. You don't. Like, oh, but there's, you know, scientists that are questioning it. Yeah, let's see how credible they are. Let's see how many of them are there. Like, for the longest time, we had scientists, they have like a congress to talk about the environment. Several biologists just get together, environmentalists get together to see if they get into a consensus, what has to be done, what is going on. There is an episode of a very good podcast called The Infinite Monkey Cage where they talk about this. They get, in their show a biology professor at a university in England, I believe, I'm not sure, and she talks about this congress, and she says that for the longest time, they would have people there that didn't believe that environmental changes were being caused by human action. Because of course we have environmental changes, but if they are caused by human activities, this is a whole other thing. So she was saying that for the longest time they would have scientists that would just believe that these things were not human related. And for the longest time, they existed, but they were getting ever so, they would decrease in number. Every Congress, they would have less until it got to the point there has like one dude, and nowadays, at least we don't have any credible scientists that believe that is not because of human action. Because it's just, again, it's basic math. If you do the math, I remember when I saw this podcast, she explained how the math works, and you need to check, for the emissions of some gases, you need to check historically how much of that we have, and then you see the difference, and you calculate how much this could be human related, and the numbers match. It's simple math. It's a complex procedure, but it's simple math, basic math. Just, adding and maybe multiplying and dividing a little bit. Then you get to the results. Like it's not difficult to get there. At least not nowadays that we have all the data that we need for it. But again, man, you should look it up. Please don't talk about masks. Please don't talk about vaccine. Please don't talk about anything. Um, like as if you wanted to convince people of your opinion if you don't have an expert opinion. All right? It's like just give your 2 cents. Oh, I don't like the idea of vaccines. Cool. That's cool. That's because you don't understand how they work. It's completely reasonable. It's just like people here in Brazil that don't think that racism exists in Brazil. It's cool. You just don't understand how it works. You don't understand maybe even what racism is, but it's cool. You can learn, all right? I don't think you're a racist or an idiot. You just need to study a little bit more about this topic if you want to learn about it. And that's it. It's not, again, it's not very complicated. This podcast is a little different. I'm even considering if I'm gonna post this or not, because maybe I'm being too aggressive. I'm not just talking about random relationship situations and stuff. I'm talking about something that might offend some people, but I just felt like I had to because like this past year and a half, I mean, we have enough problems with pseudoscience. We have enough problems with coaches. We have enough problems with a lot of people out there. They're just saying shit and taking information out of their ass. And some of them are even getting rich because of it. So the world, even before the pandemic, was already a very frustrating place. People talking about stuff like if they understand it, when in reality they have no idea. They just have no idea. And then they say, "Oh, I just think differently than you." No, fuck no. For us to think different, we need to both have studied the same amount of the subject, and then we came up to the same conclusions. If a person studied about a subject and they have an opinion, and they're talking to someone that never studied about that subject, it's not a difference of opinion, is the difference of a person knowing something and the other not knowing something. It's that simple. Like, for fuck's sake, I even get like this grinds my gears. How can you think? I mean, it's like we have an intellectual, a Brazilian intellectual. I'm calling him an intellectual because I'm trying to be nice, right? Because the guy is a fucking idiot. I'm not gonna say his name. Um, Somehow he got a legion of followers of people who just think he's intelligent. Um, and again, he's not a complete idiot, all right? I read two of his books. I read some of his statements. I've heard him talk several times because I wanted to make sure if I didn't agree with him. Because a lot of my friends, academicians, and people that just studied, they usually don't even consider reading about this guy or reading things that this guy wrote or said, listening to things that this guy said or anything. I thought, let's give him enough credit, at least enough for me to see if what he's saying is in fact stupid. And I don't like to call people stupid, all right? Again, I don't think he's generally stupid, but he says a lot of stupid and idiotic things, and people just believe him. And you know why? Because he's talking about things that people don't know about. So, let's say if I don't know anything about what's causing environmental changes, and I hear person A saying, hey, it's not human related, person B saying, hey, it's human related, I'm tempted to believe the one that agrees with me more. So if I don't want to do any recycling, if I don't want to watch out about my habits, if I don't want to be concerned all the time if I'm going to be even alive in 20 years, because of the environment, because we could die from many different things. But come on, don't be an idiot. This doesn't come into consideration here. Um, if I think I'm not going to be alive in 20 years, that's not good for me. So why would I believe that? Me as a layman, a person who doesn't understand enough of the subject, will be tempted to believe something that makes more sense to me. That's just how it works. It's just how it works. You know what I mean? So again, it's understandable if you think things that I mentioned, like there's no racism in Brazil, or vaccines don't work, or this pandemic is just political, and yada yada yada. All this crap is comprehensible because you want to distance yourself from the dire truth. I get it, right? And I even envy you in a way to be able to think this is how the world works. That is just a matter of belief, that science is a matter of belief, that a disease is a matter of politics. Like, it must be nice, but it's not how it works. And you can say, for example, and it's not just semantics, all right? But you could say, for example, that regarding science, yeah, regarding the pandemic being political, you could say the handling of the pandemic became political. It's not political, but it became political in some sectors of the globe. Here in Brazil, it became political because of personal interests of some political figures. That again, I'm not gonna bother talking about telling names and naming out people here, but it was people doing that out of their own interest. This I understand. Political figures, politicians doing stuff for their own personal gain, I understand. This is their life. They simply don't give a shit about anybody or anything. Now, you being a civilian and believing that the far right, which is very present here in Brazil today, is going to save us from communism. You believing that the pandemic is political and that the use of masks is political and the vaccines is political. Well, I don't need to offend anyone. Oh, the only thing I'm gonna tell you, if you are listening to this, is that please sorry, please consider informing yourself a little bit better. Consider where you are getting your sources from. And please consider the fact that if you didn't study something for hundreds of hours and you're talking to someone who has, their opinion is not that is worth more than you, but their opinion is based on facts and studying and understanding. And your opinion is just based on nothing. So maybe, just maybe, you should consider their opinions before telling yours. You should consider that it's much more likely that you are wrong and they are not. Just the same, if you study something vigorously and then you're talking to someone who doesn't even know anything about that particular subject, you have the upper hand. That doesn't mean you cannot learn anything from that person. You can always learn stuff when you are teaching, but you are in the position to teach because you have studied and understand and you understood, and now you dominate something that the other person doesn't. It's as simple as that. Science is not a matter of belief. Religion is a matter of belief. Science is a matter of understanding what you're reading, understanding what you're listening to. It's just different, right? It doesn't have anything to do with your personal values. Nobody could care less whether or not you like that or not, or if you've seen that or not. Like, I heard that so many times. Oh, have you seen anybody with COVID? Do you know anybody who died from COVID? That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And it should not have to be said. And yet it is. And yet I'm saying it. This podcast will be shorter. I will consider posting it or not. So if you're seeing it on YouTube, it's just because I decided to post it. If I send this podcast to you, it doesn't mean that I'm attacking you or anything. It's just me giving my 2 cents as usual. You can just give it zero credit as you do with vaccines and live on with your life. No, I'm kidding. A lot of people that I know believing, again, not believe, they understand why vaccines are important. They understand why using masks, they understand why social distancing are important when battling a virus. They understand this is not political. They understand this is just science. This is just what happens. This is just how it goes. I have to go. I have a class starting soon. And honestly, I don't need to record anything else. These were partially my 2 cents and partially my honest opinion with somewhat some credit. So take out of that what you will. So have a great day.